Feel free to continue to enjoy this delicious lunch that's been prepared by UNA Dining Services. I'm joined today by my wife, Dina, and together we want to extend a very warm Lion welcome to the University of North Alabama. And for those of you who have not been on our campus before, I need to tell you, or perhaps warn you, that we have two very large, two very much alive African lions living right in the middle of campus, about a 2-minute walk from where we're having this lunch. And so I hope that you're able to get out and about on campus a little while, perhaps during an afternoon break, and go visit the lions and see this beautiful and historic campus that we're very, very proud of. The President's home, in fact, is located about 20 feet off the lion enclosure. And so we have the world's most unusual alarm clock every morning about 5 o'clock when Leo gets hungry. Our guest presenter today has been mentioned as Dr. Jim Purcell from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. Dr. Purcell will be formally introduced to you in just a minute. But I can't let this moment pass without thanking Dr. Purcell for his willingness to make the trip to the Shoals today to lead this important discussion. So, Dr. Purcell, we're honored to have you with us, and we want you to know that UNA shares your commitment to student success and innovation, and that understanding that economic development and higher education are inextricably linked. And to all of you, I understand that we have 12 institutions here today representing both the 2-year and 4-year sectors of higher education, with our own colleagues from UNA well represented as well. Just know that it means so much to have you with us today. And here at UNA, we want to be good hosts. I don't think you understand how much it means to have a statewide audience here because of where we're at. It's just a little harder to get here. We are, in fact, in the corner of the state. And my colleagues can tell you I never miss an opportunity to remind people we're 208 miles from Montgomery. And some of you experienced that firsthand during a long ride either yesterday or this morning. But we appreciate you making the effort to get here. This campus, this city, this region is really very special and has a great deal to offer. One final recognition is very important, and that is the individual who has been most involved in the planning and logistics and the marketing of today's event, and it's the individual that you heard from earlier, our Senior Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Joy Bora. Joy, would you please stand and let us thank you? This event simply would not have happened without your efforts, so thank you very much. Now, assisting me in making sure that you all feel very welcome to this region is a friend, colleague, and UNA alumna from across the river, President Glenda Collegras of Northwest Shoals Community College. And at this point, I'll ask you to join me as we welcome President Collegras to the podium. Glenda.
Thank you, President Kitts. And on behalf of the faculty and staff of Northwest Shoals Community College, we were very grateful to be asked to be a part of this and be a partner in this event. This program, when you look at the program, it's about best practices for continuous improvement in your curriculum of the various programs and how you go about implementing programs and implementing changes to programs, and that's what we're all about. So, but I think the most important thing, because I've met people already in this room from various universities and community colleges, I think it's the networking opportunities that something like this would create. And when Dr. Bora and I talked about this several months ago, I thought this was an awesome idea to bring together a bunch of our educational partners to be able to network and talk about what we can do together. If you think about it, the increase in demands from business and industry that we're all under, and we're trying to implement performance-based funding in our state for all of us, and we're looking at global competition, not just our neighbors anymore, that's our competitors, but it's globally. That's our educational competitors. And then you look at our state population that's very, very flat, then that means that we've all got to partner together, because we're trying to increase retention, recruitment, and completion of our colleges and universities. At the same time, we have shrinking resources to do that with. So we can do so much more by partnering together. And we've done a lot of that since I've been back to the Shoals in the last year and a half now. We've had lots of discussions with several of our higher education partners, especially UNA. And we're going to have some pretty important announcement in the middle of March on that. We've been meeting to create pathways to try to bring our best students that finish at the community college, bring them on across the river. I mean, it's a natural pathway. And sometimes if we show these students the pathway all the way from the beginning at Northwest Shoals to their success there and their graduation there to their completion at our four-year school, then that's stronger, because if the student can see from start to finish, they're more likely to go on to and finish if they're in a transfer program. So days like today is what helps us to create that connected pathway, that roadmap, and make an easy transition, because we all know that there's synergy in working together. We're all in this together. We can't be seen anymore as competitors. We have to be seen as one unit working together and making it as easy and as economical as we can for our students to be able to get those educational opportunities to take advantage of them, because a lot of students are not just your traditional high school students anymore. We got to find a way to reach those non-traditionals that have been out of school for a while. So all these connections and these pathways, days like today is what's going to make that happen. So thank you so much for coming today to this event. We hope you get a lot out of it. And thank you so much for Dr. Joy Bora, all the hard work you've done. I've gotten lots of emails, so I know how much work she's put into today. So thank you so much for having us to be a part of this and your partner.
Good afternoon. I'm Ross Alexander, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost here at UNA. Thank you, President Kitts, Dr. Collegros, for those inspiring words of welcome. I too welcome all of you to UNA. I'm joined today by my beautiful wife, Lilia, and many other members of the UNA community, all of whom appreciate your attendance at this workshop. Like President Kitts, I also wish to thank and commend Dr. Joy Bora for her planning, coordination, and execution of this important event. It's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Jim Purcell, Executive Director of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, assumed his leadership duties 2 years ago and has made an immediate and positive impact on the higher education landscape in the state of Alabama. I know all of us in this room welcome and appreciate his guidance, perspective, vision, and support. Previous to his current leadership position with AIC, Dr. Purcell held similar roles in Rhode Island, Louisiana, and Arkansas, with a record of accomplishment and innovation in each. Dr. Purcell holds an EDD from the University of Alabama in Higher Education Administration, an MED in Counseling from the University of Montevallo, and a BS in Public Administration from Auburn University. He has published widely in the areas of student retention, the use of educational data for planning and policymaking, and innovations in developmental education. Please join me in extending a warm UNA welcome to Dr. Purcell.
Well, how is everybody today?
Great.
Yes. The conversation today is really it's about change, and it's sort of about change for really how higher education can control our destiny. And I think that's really probably the theme for those of you that just want to sit and eat desserts and not listen. That's the cliff notes of the particular presentation. And for you guys, since you're academics, we're going to go way back, and the history of the world really talks about how change occurs. And to me, it's really about why we need to change. Viktor Frankl, he was a counseling theorist and everything, and he said, be not so concerned about the how, but on the why. For once you know the why, the how shall surely come. And this is sort of, the first part of this presentation is all about the why and how the world has changed on us. This book is actually written for 8th graders in Germany prior to World War II. and it was really pretty good. In fact, I finally understand what history is about by this book. So if you get a chance to read it, it's really quite good. But it really talks about transition. And he says throughout history there's these events that really change how the world works and interacts. And most often it does things to your economy. You have compression of wages, restructuring of the economy, and you have communities that crash and burn or communities that survive based on how they adapt to the future. The best example he uses in there is when the loom, which is a machine that replaced the work of 100 people that did the sewing or built clothes. So those weavers, 96 of the weavers would become unemployed pretty much overnight when they brought in a machine. And this is sort of the beginning of the industrial age and those kind of things. And do everybody remember what a Luddite is? You ever been called a Luddite? Well, a Luddite he was the guy that went into these new factories and broke up the looms because he wanted the people to actually be employed again. And so when somebody calls you a Luddite, you're anti-technology and you're a very activist on it. The key here is the part in red. Everything it had taken them years to learn, first as apprentices, then as journeymen, was useless. When I was in Louisiana, we were working late, so I go down to a little place and it's called Schlitz Pizza. So it's Schlitz beer, which isn't good, and it's pizza of about the same level of quality. And you would go there as you were doing night work and stuff, and I'd go there and I'm sitting there waiting for my pizza only to come because I was still working. And the guy next to me, he had a few Schlitz. And he goes, "Hey, you, I'm mad at you." And I'm like dressed, like today, I'm well dressed. And I was like, "Me?" And he said, "Yeah, you." He says, "We had a deal." And I said, "We had a deal?" And he said, "Yeah, you people in the ties, you owners of the world, you everything, we hardworking people, we would do all the dirty work, we would do all the stuff, we would injure our bodies, we would maim them, we would do whatever, but we had a deal that you would take care of us. And that deal, you have broken that deal." And this is in 2008, 2009, and the impact that the world happened, the recession, and it is somewhat about this. Everything that had taken them years to learn, first as apprentices and then as journeymen, was useless because technology had taken over, and we're going to talk about that today. Some of it happens over generations, and in Alabama, we're big in agriculture, natural resources, and manufacturing. So in 1967, 80% of those guys didn't even have a high school diploma, or if the ones that were most skilled had a high school diploma. But then a generation later, in 2007, nearly 60% of them had an associate degree or higher in the same industry. And you're going to sort of see that trend and why higher education is going to have to adapt to this changing world. So here's America, and we had a greatest generation right after World War II. We came back and we started working and making this country the great country that it is. So 37% growth in jobs. The 50s, pretty good. Happy Days was here again. The 60s, we sort of offered access to the American dream to a lot more people. More people were working. The 70s, women sort of got more engaged and started working a lot more. The 80s, and then the 90s, and then what happened after 2000? Does anyone think what the growth was? -1%. The jobs are not there. It's because technology, to some extent, has replaced some of those. That's the beauty of computers. When I worked in the Georgia system, we had a formula for every 15 faculty, we had a full-time secretary. And that was the formula, and that we still use that formula, but even when it was way beyond needing to have as many support staff. So this is 2000, and blue is a beautiful thing. That's jobs gained in the previous year. Bigger bubbles, good. Little bubbles, growth, but not so big. And then you'll see little oranges, and oranges are jobs lost. So let's sort of see what happened in America over the last 18, 19 years. So does anybody recognize what this implosion of the economy was? This was 9/11. So a year after 9/11, and you can sort of see how the economy really changes anytime you have a traumatic event. And then we sort of picked up and we started recovering, moving on into 2004 or so, moving on, and then something starts to happen. Anybody recognize what that was? Katrina and Rita. And it really does change the economy. Then we're saying, okay, we're going back to work. We're going to make it happen. Yes, the economy starts popping in lots of places. And then that happened. That's the recession. And that's lots of people who've lost jobs. That's technology. That's bad business management or inappropriate. A lot of things caused this. But in the end, there was growth, but it was very different. Now, at that point, these guys came in and said, how do we fix this? How do we fix this? And there's two books that I would recommend that sort of address how you can help your communities, and we as higher ed should address this. And in those two books, they talk about it's the density of educated and skilled workers that are going to be the future of your economies. And if you do not have that density, if you are too rural, you're going to have a great difficulty building and bringing businesses there because they have to have skilled people now. And it's all about alignment of skills to jobs. Have to have access to good schools, colleges, and universities. And what they say is your college and university towns will be the potential for the economies in the future. You have to have that entity near you. Certainly local leadership helps. And the other thing is they say it's no longer a state solution. It's back to Sparta versus Athens, throwing rocks and hand grenades at each other and fighting for the jobs. The jobs wars are there, and making sure you have a work-ready community. So the key is building emerald cities, places where people who have hopes and aspirations of the American dream can go and prosper and be successful. And really, to some extent, that's what colleges and universities are. If Horace Greeley was alive today, he would say, go to college, not go west, young man. And that's important. The other thing they talked about is that your economy is not based on your smart kids, your A kids in your high schools. You know why? They don't ever come back. It's your B, C, D students that are in your communities today will build your economy. Now, whether they are skilled enough to go to college or get credentials, they will be your economy of the future. So here's 2009, and we have a recovery that took longer than the previous maps, but here you see that, yes, America's back. Jobs are growing. Alabama's finally catching up here a couple of years later. Notice the Boston, which has a density of skilled folks, Dallas, some of those California places like Silicon Valley, Seattle, are all your engines for the future. So this is where we are in October. Now, how does Alabama benefit from this? How do we optimize our future? Well, if you take the theories from these books and you apply them to Alabama, you end up with a map that shows where the potential progress for the state's going to be. And number one is going to be Tuscaloosa, Jefferson, Shelby County. They have the largest density of skilled and educated people. Still today, they're going to be the engine. And then second are you guys, most of you, at least in the audience. And we sort of recognize that. Y'all are sort of the real shiny thing right now. Everybody thinks that you're bigger and better than all Tuscaloosa, Jefferson, Shelby. But in reality, they got their moxie still going. Then you get Mobile, Baldwin, a lot of transportation stuff. You got Amazon, you got boat building, you got airplane building, you got lots of great things there. And then you have this, which is all the government workers in Auburn. And actually, Lee County actually is pretty good. They have Kia right across the state border. A lot of the manufacturing is done there. So that's going to be your engine. And they've done a good job. But generally, the multiplier in that community is just government workers. And GDP, which is how you make economies grow, when you're a government worker, you're just giving me your dollar, and then you're taxing me, and I'm giving you a dollar back. So it doesn't really produce an economy in the weirdest way. And then, of course, this swath of area down here is showing great potential, mostly because they don't have a lot of old industry there. And so if you do build something there, you can build it on a flat piece of farmland. and rock and roll. The other flip side of this is these books will also say you have to just invest in the winners. You have to invest in those counties and communities that have an opportunity. That there are some counties whose economies have come and gone. And if you think about the history lessons of the past, when we go to vacation, we go to places that are lesser than what they were. They were great once, and we just look at their ruins now, right? So if I apply that to Alabama, you'll sort of see some big swaths here. And it basically is anybody that's retired who gets Social Security, local government, transfer payments, local teachers. If that number goes over 50%, your economy's toast because you are no longer an economy that's being developed by GDP. Does that make sense? If you actually do the math on our counties, because this is just Social Security, if you add in the rest, more than half of our counties are beyond redemption in their current structure. And what we have to do is work with them individually and help them identify what their new future is. We have to prioritize the places that are rocking and rolling, and then we have to focus on the ones that are out there that have some potential. Now, the historical proof that education matters is that if you actually increase one level of education in a community, you're going to get a big jump in GDP and a big 17% increase in wages for that community. And of course, that produces the future. Now, here's the scary part. Y'all ready for some scary parts? This report came out just this last year in the summer. By 2030, 375 million workers in this world will be displaced by technology and automation. 166 million of them are in America. And what it's saying is they got to tool up or they're going to be unemployed or doing much lesser than what they were originally trained for. Alabama's choice is to prepare for this or to be the victim of it. And of course, it's up to us in higher ed, because higher ed's always been the entity that they've come to address some of the world's biggest problems. If we do this poorly, we'll go back to a recession, and there's the estimates on it. If we do it super poorly, we'll have a big loss in unemployment, increase in unemployment. And so this is how it works. Machines versus man. And it'll show you these are car plants all over the world. Ford, India, went from 453 to 2,500. Notice the second one, Hyundai. 400 machines replaced 4,800 workers. Now, you know, we have a Hyundai plant here in Montgomery, just down a couple hundred miles from here. It seemed like a couple hundred miles. Here's the press release. Hyundai announced its plan to invest $388 million to expand a 260 square foot engine head manufacturing plant. Aren't we excited? How many jobs do you think that plant is going to produce, permanent jobs? Well, Dr. Nash knew the right answer. So. This job will mean 50 new jobs, $388 million investment, and it's just 50 jobs. So certainly economic prosperity will occur, but it's without the people. What they show in this report is this is the middle class and how many are going to be dropping out of the middle class. And you got two choices. You can be poor and you could be like with the oil can, you know, making sure the robots don't squeak, or you can be technologically proficient and program those robots to do what you want them to do. We have choices. The other thing that happened is it says certainly we're going to not have any of these high school graduates having issues. They're still going to not be, needed as much in the workforce. But it says between now and 2030, certainly we're going to need the associate degree market. But as the closer we get to 2030, it's the emphasis is going to be in more bachelor level credentials or at least additional technical credentials at community colleges. So you have to go back and get retooled. And if they don't do that, they're going to be unemployed. The other thing they say is we've got to build mechanisms for everybody to be retooled every couple years. And we're not having that, yes, in America, but we may think about doing that for the future. So here's the deal. If you make $20 an hour or less, which is $40,000 or less, you have an 83% probability that you will be automated out of a job by 2030. That's pretty soon. A third of people making between $40,000 and $80,000 are going to be out of a job by technology, and they'll be taken over. Pretty exciting, huh? You know, it's just like this presentation here. Eventually, I could just record it, and y'all could watch it, and maybe y'all would like that. You could speed it up through the slow parts. So there's always these things. It does make for a better work environment. And for those of you that are thinking that this is, you know, sort of gloom and doom kind of people, this is actually from the Trump White House. This is their report, which actually validated the previous report, which is from a think tank. Governor Ivey has recognized this. She's talked about a lot of things that we need to do. And then think about this little square part. It says that, you know, when the recession hurt, we had 6 million people out of jobs. We didn't have any jobs. Now we can't find anybody. It's about a 1-to-1 ratio of jobs, except the people that want a job don't have the skill. But I will say it's actually worse than this. This is where I get my statistics because I don't trust the government, even though I work for one. This is the Shadow Statistics newsletter, which is an entity that produces economic stuff, and they've done it for 50 years, so they're almost credible. What America used to do is anytime we saw a country that had more than 20% of their working age people unemployed, we would go in and take them over because they were a problem. That level of disruption is very difficult for an economy to sustain. Well, this is America. When that recession hit in 2009, more than 20% of the people just are unemployed. Some may be trying, which are the lower numbers. The official number is the one in red. The middle number is the one that the federal government does report. It's sort of like long-term unemployment. And the one at the top is actual unemployment of adults. We are at the threshold where the federal government used to identify countries as being problematic because they didn't have a workforce that sustains. That is our dilemma as leaders in education. Now, to get it down to nitty-gritty, most of you are at some point younger than me, and I sort of need to tell you how the world works. This is GDP, gross domestic product. We talked about how important that was. Look how much we've been able to improve gross domestic product since 1975. Remember, we had everybody working? That's great. But guess what this is? Household income. And notice it didn't increase that much. And you say, well, of course, we got more efficiency. We took a product and then we popped it and made household income didn't have to go up as much. But here's the scary part, guys. That's household income. It takes 2 incomes to sustain a household today. And in 1975, it was not that much. So in 1960, only 25% of households had more than one person working. 1980, 35%. And then we really had everybody working by 1987 and on. So our economy, now let's go back to the guy that was trying to tell me how the world works, that he was ashamed that I didn't have my part of the bargain. This is what he was feeling. Year and year and year, he was doing his part, and he had a deal. We had a deal, and you have broken the deal. And this is what the broken deal looks like. And for those of you that are nearing retirement, it's not just for the workers, because right now your Social Security retirement will be worth 34% less than it was in 2000. So God bless America, even for those who are in the workforce that did their best. Now here's the solution, and the solution really talks about what is good and bad and ugly. And this is the K through 12 report card for the last couple of years. Everybody ready to see how your schools are doing? And this is districts, because you can make a good school, high school. You can make a good elementary school by just districting all the smart people's families into a school district. But when you look at a district, you can tell whether the city is taking care of itself and taking care of all of its people. So there is a relationship between poor and poor districts and low-performing schools. So these counties that are darker is sort of where you're going to see the higher levels of poverty. The other scales for are A, B, C, D, so green is good. The other thing you're going to see is little diamonds. Diamond's a city, and a circle is a county. Everybody ready? There are no D districts above this line. There are a lot of D districts below that line. So if you were a business coming to America, coming to somewhere in America to bring a business, where would you go? You'd go right there, wouldn't you? There are only 3 A districts below Birmingham. Is that scary? There's only 1 county district that made an A. Last year there were none. And why is that? Because county districts have more cost. They have all the legacy costs, and of course the little school districts that sort of buy themselves out of a school district, they don't have those legacy costs, and they can concentrate on certain other things that help them do well. The other thing we looked at is actually local investment. If you did the bare minimum fund, you have in Alabama, you have to give a certain amount of minimum, state, local minimum, and then you get a state match, and you have to do that. If you were a poor district and you gave more than the state minimum, you did better. So if you taxed yourself, even if you were poor, at a higher rate, and it wouldn't really produce you a whole lot of money sometimes, you did better. But I think it's not the money. I think it's the fact that you care enough for your kids to invest in them. 2/3 of all the A's are right here. So if you're in this neck of the woods, this is where the future economy is going to be coming to a location near you. Now, do you want to look at some sad stuff? This is 3rd grade math. And it's what percentage of these school districts are college or grade ready. So this is 3rd grade math, the number of kids in that district who are 3rd grade ready. And what you'll find here is what we would call Lake Wobegon. 50% of all the kids in a school are 3rd grade ready. 50% ain't great, but that's pretty good. But that's because the rest of the places are below 50%. Now, if you're going to do modern industry and you're going to do modern things, if you're going to have them come to our colleges and universities, those counties that are circled in red are going to be problematic. Now, you ready for the scary statistics? This is reading. Everything that's circled by red are below 50%. That is tragic. Now I'll give you, there's a county in this, in this circle. Last year, their report card, 7% of 3rd graders were on reading level. 7%. The chances of them going to college is probably 5%. Now the good news about accountability is once it was out there, they started trying to fix things. And this year, they went up to 15%. Pretty cool, huh? Just by no accountability funding or anything, but just the fact that people saw that there were issues, they addressed it. So we have to think about that. So for higher ed, we've suggested a couple things, and it's, yes, we got to take care of pre-K expansion in the state to help with those reading scores. We've got to help improve K through 12, and we've got to include some more career tech stuff. But we've also to address this idea of summer melt. Those of you that are in enrollment management know there's a lot of kids that say they're coming to UNA or anywhere, and then they wander off because they finally get that first job for $3.42 and think that they got living the dream. What we've got to do is optimize that for our kids and for their generations and their kids after that. So we do have to increase financial aid completion so that those that are ready to go to college can go, expand state aid programs. I went to the governor last year and said, Governor, in Alabama, the need-based aid is only $2,250,000 for the whole state. Now, I've done this job in several other states. It never was below 30 million anywhere. And I said, Governor, you could be the first Republican governor ever to double need-based aid. And today I can give it to you for $2,250,000. And I will say I'm very proud that, and she worked in the AIC office for 8 years, so she is committed to higher ed, and she increased need-based aid 40% in her first year as governor. And I'm assuming that this year she'll get it more, and eventually we will get it to double. But that's what we've got to do, is we've got to take care of the working poor and their kids to help them become successful. This particular chart, where are we here? There we are, is we have a thing where we help the kids in senior class fill out the FAFSA, and we have to work with high schools, districts. Everybody in green signed up. If you are in a school district or live near one that's in black, let me know, because we're trying to get these guys to just give their kids a chance at having access. I'm going to go down to this last two here. Ease job relocation burden for recent graduates. One of the other things that happens with low-income folks is they can graduate, but they go home back to mama, they're looking for their first job opportunity, and then they get a job opportunity, let's say in Huntsville, and they live down in Montgomery. They got to pay their deposits to live somewhere. And what this would be a guarantee that if you graduate from our institutions in the last 5 years and you have a job opportunity that requires you to move, we will help guarantee your utility deposits, because you can't afford the $600 or $700 to do it. I just moved to Montgomery and they charged me $600. And I'm like, well, can't you just look at my credit card or know that I'm working for the state? And they said, no, you give us your $600. So what we would do is guarantee their gas, utilities, and water. Now, I will say that we will collect them and hunt them down like wild dogs if they don't keep up. But it would be a way for us to encourage it, because it's all about the transition points. It's transition into college, summer melt, and it's also about getting out in the real workforce. I want to talk for a long time a little bit about micro-credentials and how important that is to the future. Notice that the economies all have to change and we have to educate people differently. To me, the future of higher education in this state right now is us doing some kind of micro-credentials well. Right now, we have a thing called, a college degree, but no one knows what it means. We have so many of them now, nobody knows the value of it. The micro-credentials allow students to demonstrate really what they know. It's more granular, it's more specific, and it helps. Businesses actually say they want liberal arts talent, they want people that can think critically and all those things. But they don't hire people based on that. They hire them based on a particular gap in their workforce, which is a specific technical something. Now, they will promote you later for your ability to be critical thinking, but not the first job. So to me, if you ask the question of chicken or egg, I think the key is you're going to have some specific technical components attached to your degrees in order for them to be marketable. And remember how quick the economy is changing. You have to do it as they get out of college because the industry is going to change so quickly. Currently in higher ed, we do these things called non-degree certificates in this state. Y'all do a couple of those. But they come to us, and at AIC, we don't even look at them, or we just approve them in group or something. There's no definition of whether it's really worthy or not. Some of them are pretty weak. They're just a collaboration of 12 courses, just sort of things. But then others are really meaty things. And what we're suggesting is think about the idea of having something that's called a non-degree certificate, and you put that on a resume. Doesn't that sound unimportant? So what if we had credentials that really mattered, that were significant? So my thought, and we're going to be having a conversation among all the academics in Alabama about this, is if we do micro-credentials, if we call it something else, does it need to be reviewed? Most states, Georgia has a nexus degree, says it has to earn an industry-recognized credential. Do we want that? It needs to be portable. Some colleges have already talked to me that they want whatever credential, micro-credential they produce, that those credit hours will be recognized at other universities. Some people want to have these micro-credentials that aren't connected to a particular major, but you could just connect it to lots of different majors. Normally, they're 9 to 15 hours. And then there's the question is, if somebody gets an industry credential based on your 9 to 15 hours, what if somebody shows up at your schoolhouse door with that credential? How are you going to count that? You have 15 hours that says we're going to give you this credential, but you already have that credential. Are you going to say that's your life experience is worth those 15 credits? How are we as an academy going to address that particular thing? In Georgia, their Nexus degree is all about connecting to the workforce. You can have it if industry says we want it, and if industry defines what that industry credential is. But I think this is going to be the future for a lot of folks. And you say, well, this is academic crap, we don't need to worry about it. This is real life stuff. Why your first job matters out of college. And if those of you, this is CNBC, and you might say this is fake news, I'll show you the publication. So it's not exactly fake news, it's just fake news reported on it. They went to an academic scholarly journal and got the literature. More than 40% of college graduates take positions out of school that don't require a degree. So they're going home. 1 in 5 still aren't working in a degree-demanding job a decade after leaving college. Is that scary? Employers are specific about the skills they need, and our individuals in schools really don't know what they need, and we're going to have to help train them and help them. The literature shows once you're underemployed, you're going to be that way for here on out because no one hires you based on your degree. They hire you on your last job. So if you are a barista, they're going to hire you based on that barista skills, which is pretty good skills, not to deny that we all need a latte at some point in our lives. So this is the other issue is price. This is an institution. Oh, it's this institution. That's what you get for sponsoring the event. You get to see the data. Well, they have 70% of their students receive federal loans. Now you think about when you build an economy and everybody's paying a debt back, that money's leaving the state. It's not producing GDP. It's paying a banker in a foreign country or in America. And for this institution, it's $22,309. That's one of the lowest in the state. And they're going to be paying $237 a month. And just think about the ones that didn't graduate, how painful that's going to be. Now, higher ed has not done this well, so we're going to talk about the Native Americans and the William and Mary College. Okay, so here's the story. The Virginians are making a deal with the Native Americans about some additional land. They get to like a side conversation and say, hey guys, we'd like, once we get through with this, if you want to send some of your braves to William and Mary, we'll teach them about all the stuff that we do in education. And the Native Americans were polite and said, well, we'll give you your response tomorrow. But thank you for asking. And this is their response. We are convinced, therefore, you mean to do us good by your proposal, and we thank you heartily. But you who are wise must know that different nations have different conceptions of things, and you will therefore not take it amiss if our ideas of this kind of education happen not to be the same with yours. We have had some experience of it. That's sort of how employers are today. They sort of know what they get, and they don't think it perfectly fits. So this is what the tribes also went on to say. Several of our young people were formerly brought up at the College of the Northern Provinces, which is what Harvard is today. They were instructed in all your sciences, but when they came back to us, they were bad runners, ignorant of every means of living in the woods, unable to bear either cold or hunger, neither knew how to build a cabin, take a deer, kill an enemy, spoke our language imperfectly, were therefore neither fit for hunters, warriors, nor counselors. They were totally good for nothing. And that's 300 years ago. So the tribe also said, but we're thankful that you and obliged by your kind offer, though we decline accepting it. And to show our grateful sense of it, the gentlemen of Virginia, send us a dozen of your sons, and we'll take care of their education, instruct them in all we know, and make men of them. Industry is asking that same question today. They are asking that we prepare them as the world requires. So we talked about this report. It's all enabling individuals to learn marketable skills throughout their lifetime. And if we do that, we will have communities that have greater civic involvement, greater blood, less social assistance required. This is a good one. You're less likely to be convicted of a crime if you're more educated. Doesn't mean you don't commit them, but you're less likely to go to jail. It's incarceration. And you may also be able to pay better lawyers so you don't have to do any jail time. But incarceration is the key part of this statistic. Percent below poverty is less. Enrollment rates for unemployment are less. It used to be a good thing to own a home ownership among the affluent. And this is the critical thinking thing. If you're driving down a road and you're stopped at a roadblock and you've been drinking, did you wear a seatbelt? Can you critically think that there may be risk in needing a seatbelt? And here's the answer: the more educated, the better. But here is the true test of critical thinking. What if you are legally drunk? What's the answer? And notice how that changes the answer. But for those with higher education, even much more likely to wear a seatbelt than. Average family income is up $1 million over a lifetime. And I would end it with this, really. At the end of World War II, you saw the great job growth, and that really made the American dream the greatest generation that was out there. But they invested in their people. They invested in their workforce to make that future possible. And perhaps Alabama's greatest generation is at our schoolhouse door, waiting for the opportunity to propel Alabama into the global economy. And we in this room have to be the ones to help them build the skill set to make this future happen. And hopefully the conversation today and on for the rest of the year will help us try to understand what that is going to look like. And that's all I got to say, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that inspiring and powerful presentation. Between all the 12 institutions here today, we impact 100,000 students daily on our campuses. That number is not to be taken lightly. And following your presentation, I think we can all agree that there is work to be done, right? So thank you again. I'd like to thank AIC and Northwest Shores Community College for your partnership of this event, so thank you very much. That concludes the first half of our presentation. Let's give another round of applause to Dr. Prasad. At this time, we will take our first break, and we will reconvene at 1:15 in the Performance Center, which is to your right as you go out these doors. So thank you for coming today, and we hope to see you in our next workshops. Thank you.